This is stop number 3 in our Habitat Day tour, and we're stopping at Rhonda's Corners, a new hunting plot that we've created this year. Actually started creating it by brush hogging, I think, in February. So we already have the stand, mock scrape, camera location, and this is a former switchgrass field. So we're going to talk about how we're going to turn this into a beautiful plot of annual, cool season annual, going into the fall, and then with a base of clover, so this will be a beautiful clover plot by next spring. This is a plot that what you see behind you is what this was down here. This started like a lot of food plots, just brush hogged it out in the, and because it was so thick and matted with switchgrass, I brush hogged it. If it wasn't, then I wouldn't have brush hogged it. But started this by brush hogging sometime in February just to get everything down and hopefully let it break apart. And you wanted to have at least some soil exposure to get buckwheat. And you look at it, it doesn't seem like a lot of soil exposure, but if you look at the buckwheat in here, it's coming in actually pretty strong. Each one of those buckwheat plants will get to, say, a 6-inch head on top, 4 to 6 inches. So if you look at that, kind of that spacing, you'll have that really good smother crop. You can see some of the switchgrass is still left right here. And it was because it was so thick when everything started to green up, some of that switchgrass that was starting to emerge was protected under the plants, so it didn't get a good kill on it. That will be killed by the second spring. If that switch were to get too tall before I'd like to terminate this in about 6 weeks, actually about 5 weeks, then we'd come through here with clethodim and just kill the switch out of the buckwheat. But I love this size. This is more my favorite size of hunting plot right here. And we have a ladder stand in the tree that's right back there. We need to clear for shooting lanes. We actually installed that ladder stand probably end of January, February. Mowed this out in February, somewhere around there. Installed the mock scrape and camera. Got all this in here. So this is the way I've started a lot of food plots, where it's just brush, you're spraying. In this case, we sprayed. Jen planted buckwheat on here. Buckwheat's doing great, isn't it? Great, yeah. And then we'll terminate the buckwheat. I'll put in probably brassica, the Big Boost Brassica 365 to get the clover established for next year. That way we have the cool season annual. What makes this work though is the deer are already using this edge to go through anyways. There's a big food plot over there that's over an acre. There's a water hole over that way about 100 yards. We passed the entrance trail to it. And then we have the big food plot we passed by about 250, 300 yards back. So this is just a nice little intimate movement. This is all switchgrass right here. A great post daybreak stand entrance where we can just come right in across the field in the valley, get right into this. In fact, we've turkey hunted using the same draws going across back and forth while they're over on one side or the other, and the turkeys don't see you if they're 100 yards away. You can just slip right up and over, get into position. So pretty cool run and gun area around here. We almost got one with you doing that a couple years ago.
That was a good time.
But so that's how this food plot will take shape, but really it's more about this movement through here. Dylan and I even debated on whether to put a food plot here or just the mock scrape. I like, because how small and intimate this is, I don't think it destroys that feeling by just putting the small little food plot in here. It's really rimmed in pretty. There's exceptional trails that come right out there. And then on the back side of this point, this is another spot where Joel spent a lot of time cutting. So he's cutting different layers on benches down there, water hole up there. And then right in here, there's a ditch that comes up from the bottom. So they constrict their movement just about 10 yards in there. And I drop trees so that they have to be pinched up right into this area. So they're almost pinched to the plot when they move through here. They can slip behind it. But when we sat in there, we used to have a water hole down there. And we sat there, we'd get a lot of movement out here coming up behind us, not because they were trying to get downwind of us, just because that's their natural movement to go right over to that food plot over there. So by sticking in this cluster, we're safer set, and we're still, I don't think we lose that intimacy by here with a little hunting plot. I love hunting out of a stand like that right up there. And so, and this has been a great camera. This is where we got Junior with one rack back in January, February with one antler, I think February sometime. We've had turkeys moving through everything. We had some bucks come right through here the other day into the spot. So really looking forward to this taking shape right here. And we call it Rhonda's Corners.
Yeah, I think it was 2021 maybe.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah, and I sat there a few times, and there always seemed like there was this little doe that came through. So I always, yeah, Rhonda's back.
She just, Rhonda's corner, she's just waiting on the corner for the boys.
Yeah,
That's what.
Wait for the boys.
So this turned into Rhonda's corners.
Can you say again your logic as far as the buckwheat first, followed by what?
Buckwheat is a great smother crop. So it'll help outcompete a lot of the weeds that'll come up in here. It's a good soil builder. It breaks up the soil. Makes it so there's no erosion through here. We're fortunate with the switchgrass. That would make sure we're not getting any erosion. But it's going to put nutrients into the soil. And then that crop following the buckwheat is always a really good crop. Kind of like brassica following clover, for example. If you terminate the clover, the brassica will do really well. It feeds on that nitrogen that's put back in the soil. But that buckwheat is a really good cover crop to have before an intended crop to build the soil and give it a boost.
So when do you terminate it?
This will be terminated right around, and what we'll do is this buckwheat will actually probably be in this range in 5 weeks. So we'll terminate it, we'll smash it down, spray it. We'll probably spray it with Liberty Ultra. It's as powerful as 2,4-D, but it doesn't have the residual of 2,4-D. Regardless, so we can spray it, wait about 10 days, and this buckwheat will look like that. It'll be brown, but it'll look like that switchgrass there. It'll be very open and stalky. And so we can spread the seed right on the ground, the brassica, little tiny seeds and clover. Imagine this buckwheat seed, it's about the size of like a beech nut. So imagine that was able to get down to the soil. Imagine those little teeny brassicas and clovers. They'll get right down the soil. We'll get a really good termination spray and kill. It'll be open ground, and then that thatch will aid in germination. You can see compared to some of the buckwheat you'll see out on the property in another spot, this buckwheat is actually a little bit taller. And what we're finding is the buckwheat growing in the rye, or in this case, the thatch of the switchgrass, it germinates earlier. So it's actually getting more height and more volume more quickly because it doesn't need as much moisture to germinate. So,
and with that thatch, that buckwheat acts as like that thatch too.
Yeah, it does.
For those other seeds. But we specifically had somebody ask a few days ago about the buckwheat. And with terminating it, someone's like, well, do I have to go in there and kill it and then mow it? And it's like, these stalks are made up of so much water, you know, like so much water. So they like go down to like nothing.
These leaves right here, especially when they're older, in the top of the stalk, if you just wad that up, it's like 85% moisture. So when you kill it and terminate, which is another reason I like spraying, because if you just roll it, it kind of half dies. So it can start to lift up after a few days. Some of it grows, some of it doesn't. It doesn't kill it. You spray it, then it turns to dust within 10 days. Literally just stalks of the buckwheat laying there. The whole leaf and branch structure of the leaf is gone. So it just terminates. If you pick up a leaf, smear it around in your fingers turn green. It's all water. So that's a good thing because it maintains soil moisture. It's fine. It's a fine organic root matter. I don't think, if I pull one of these bigger ones out, I don't think it's going to show me much root. But imagine that right there, about the size of a softball, baseball. That's that fine organic root matter that you get later in the year. So it's lifting up the soil. You can see how there's soil lifted up with it already. And it breaks apart really nice. So it's a really good soil builder, lifts up the soil. So we love it. And it's not really that attractive to deer, or you'd see it all nipped up in here.
Do you want to roll it during a non-rain period, or do you like if it's
right before? Yeah, so typical time that you'd look at. And it's hard because if you're doing it 10 days in advance, we used to put the seed into the buckwheat almost exclusively and then roll it over plant. The problem is if it's this high, you get inconsistent germination because the seed doesn't spread as far, it spreads more unevenly. Also, we would try to target about waist high, easy to walk through, seed into, good coverage, roll it. But then we were using 2,4-D a lot and there was a residual. So if we wanted to use 2,4-D, you'd spray 2,4-D and kill the germinating buckwheat if you got immediate rain. So we would only use glyphosate. So if you had pigweed or water hemp, smartweed, bad weeds that were coming in underneath, you couldn't combat the weeds because you're only using glyphosate. So now with Liberty Ultra, you get the same power as 2,4-D, or you spray 2,4-D on it. Either way, you wait 10 days and then plant. Then you're outside of that period of time, put the seeds on the soil, you get a really good weed kill. And so typically, we would either have rye into this, if it was our normal annual cool season annuals, going into the spring, we terminate the rye, plant the buckwheat at the same time, then terminate the buckwheat, spray, and then plant our, so we're only spraying twice a year, and then we're getting a crop in between every spraying. So then that way you're really working on the soil. You're only working on that top inch or two of topsoil. And we have had great luck. We've never had the need in decades of doing this in dozens of fields to come in here and till this up or plow it up or disc it up. That's the first thought everyone has, but you just don't need to do it. And you can see the growth we're getting on our buckwheat. It's coming in really well.
Is Liberty Ultra a farm store product? Or
Yes, we actually ordered online. But we use, you can run it hot at 3 quarts per acre, 2 to 3 quarts per acre. And then we're adding...
No residual?
No. Then we're using 2 pounds of ammonium sulfate per acre. So we're mixing that all together in a tank and going out and spraying. You do have to use larger tips. It makes a little bit of a thicker solution. So I use a little bit larger tip on the sprayer, and then we're usually traveling about 8 miles an hour when we spray with that. So you get the field done pretty quick at 8 miles an hour too.
So why are you waiting 10 days to seed after you?
So the buckwheat breaks down. So then you're not putting seed that potentially lays on top of the buckwheat and can't get through to the soil. And then you don't have to worry about how tall your buckwheat is. So I'd rather the buckwheat be chest high, neck high, because that's more nutrients, more shade, more smother crop. But so back in the day, we'd try to we want the buckwheat to only grow for 5 or 6 weeks because we only want it to be waist high. We talk about that online. You know, if it's chest high, smash it first, then seed, wait a week. If it's waist high, seed into it. And people are seeding into it when it's chest high. The message kind of gets lost. At the same time, then by using 2,4-D, we didn't have an opportunity to combat heavy weeds or bad weeds. So kind of just makes a better program, even if we're waiting 10 days with Liberty. Then just go do it. What I like about Liberty is you're not mixing 2,4-D and glyphosate. You're just putting Liberty in, adding some ammonia and some AMS and going and spraying. So pretty easy.
yeah, what are you adding to that Liberty?
AMS, ammonium sulfate, just helps break down the leaf so the chemical can penetrate. It's granular.
How much do you add to it?
2 pounds per acre. Yeah, we have a seed scoop we use. And that seed scoop is roughly under a little bit of 2 pounds. I usually use a rounded seed scoop. It's a big metal scoop. Just dip it in the bag and throw it in there.
Just change your tips out on your sprayer. Because
Yeah. And then what we're doing is we're starting to spray, like I sprayed my fertilizer with that. I just went 8, 9 miles an hour, went faster. So it's just going it's the same rate per acre. You're just driving a little bit faster. Typically we're more like 7 miles an hour. So that's 6 to 7. This is more 8, 9.
I got a question, Jeff.
Sure, Joe.
When you're planning out a plot like this, more of like an interior that's surrounded on all sides, how many hours a day of sun exposure do you look for when planting something?
Yeah, it's a good question. When we're looking at clover is shade tolerant. And I don't like when I see like shady food plot mixes, because people go and plant it and they're only getting a half hour of sun a day or an hour. And you might get a piece of clover growing every 5 inches. It's just, yeah, it's growing, but it's nothing for the deer. So I look at, like with clover, you want to have at least 4 hours. When you get into brassica, I'd rather have 6 or 7 hours, plus. 4 hours you can get away with a little bit more. So this plot, I'm trying to think north that way. So we're getting some good morning sun coming up into here, and then afternoon sun right up here, a little bit of daylight on this edge, but the buckwheat needs full sun. So you can kind of get a good gauge with the buckwheat. You can see how the buckwheat's smaller around this edge. So we'll have clover over there. It'll be a little bit diminished, but out here we'll get pretty good clover. You can see the stand location. We pinched it off right in front of this bush right here. So really they're either way in the back of that, but deer actually come out from back here too. So everything kind of meets right here. The trail comes in from over there. Trails go straight out to the food plot over there and off that corner. So everything kind of bow ties right here as far as hunting strategy. The shy one's talking.
I know.
Everyone, this is Andrew.
Hey.
Say hi, Andrew. Introduce yourselves. He won't go talk to you.
No,
So
all right, enough.
yeah.
So for that licking branch, would you want to clear out some of the brush there on the left-hand side? So like, let's say a buck's entering over there in that open area that, especially a new buck coming into the farm, can see
Stick
that
out a little
licking
bit
branch
more.
and not have to come like the whole angle.
I could see that. So it's sticking out a
So it
little bit
actually
more.
kind of sticks out.
So it's more profiled.
That was something that we talked about when we put that in here, specifically because you always want to, deer, go full circle. And even like Jeff had talked about that, like, is this going to be like too close, to
like too hidden.
Yeah, too hidden. But
they're hitting it pretty. They're pretty good. But I think they'll scrape around this bush right here too. So it's kind of, it's because it's so narrow here. But yeah, I would think that in a normal setting, if this was like a true quarter acre, half acre food plot and it was off to the edge like that, but they come through this narrow throat right now so much that when they're in here, they see it.
When they're up here, they see it and they come down to it.
Well, and they see it from over here, but you could make a case you could do it from over there. One of the concerns here is the camera's so close too, that any little movement sets this off. So we actually have the cameras pointed more about right here. So this is off to the side and pointed down a little bit. So it's getting more from here down as opposed to the whole stick. So we found that in those reveal cameras, the most sensitive portion is the center of the frame. And so if you're moving that off to the side, it really helps. I mean, we've had cameras over there where every time, like behind the house, the garbage truck went by on our dirt road 200 yards away, because it was right in the middle of the frame, we'd get a picture of the garbage truck going by every Tuesday, there and back.
So I'm assuming you hunt this primarily in the afternoon, but hypothetically, if you were to hunt a spot like this in the morning, we hear about you talking about cheating the wind all the time. Is that enough of an elevation change where if you could blow the scent over the top of a deer?
It's a tough one.
That's kind of a trial and error. You kind of find out by.
It is close. And I would say if it's a stronger wind more than a lighter wind, you'd probably get away with more.
Sure.
So you're getting that updraft coming up. Typically, we have enough options that we probably wouldn't risk it.
Sure.
But to me, there's enough of an elevation change that in the evening, if it's going down to 0 miles an hour and you're getting south wind, it's probably going to tail back before dark.
Sure. But
so we want a constant wind in the evening.
Okay.
And we'll hunt this evening or post daybreak.
Sure.
So we'll hunt it either one.
Okay.
I feel safe with hunting in either one.
Okay.
Although that water hole right over there is a really cool morning one. That's a cruising spot. And so we might slant this more toward evening as they're coming out, going through here to get to that food right there.
Would you ever think of just leaving that tree right there with the linked branch and just pushing this back like 10 yards?
That corner right there?
Just this whole, like everything that's creating the funnel. Would you push that back and just leave that tree?
No, the only thing was like Andrew was talking about, if we cut out this so that this stuck out more from the side, that would be the only consideration. But making this bigger, I don't want to make it bigger for the food. I just like this little intimate feel right here. It constricts around right here. So we could leave this little island, but I think we'd lose a little bit of the intimate feel as far as making this a lot bigger than it needs to be. Really just a pass through in between.
Because I noticed with our particular farm where I hunt, there's lots of situations where you get little fingers that come out like this. And every time you get your licking branch, like your typical like you have here, and they like to skirt on the edge of the woods and they stay where you can't get a shot at them.
And that's where it's really important, like that this lines up side to side, like there's trails come right in there. So if a deer comes across, they can just go straight across, and we have food right there, big food, and then the water hole lined up right there too. So we're trying to line them up over here. It's almost like they have to go out of the way down there. And then because that ditch comes up and I knock down some aspen over the top of the ditch where they cross, that pushes them up so where they can cut across in there on that back side. But a lot of reason, including the little food plot and the mock scrape, for them just to come right here, not to mention they're typically going right there anyways. So a lot of times when you're sitting in that oak right there, they would come between this stand and that oak. And again, they're not trying to circle downwind of us. That's just the way they go, is right through there on that end. So we're trying to line everything up.
If you didn't have the mock grapevine hanging down right there, do you think they would still come around and just hit the tree right behind you where it's hanging down?
Yeah, they might.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might.
A lot of situations like that on my place. I was just, I always question the value if I need it versus or
so
not.
we don't, one of the things with that is if they do, that'll eventually break off. This to me holds a lot of scent. and it's right in their face. Fawns can participate. It was interesting. We did a mock scrape and rub study on the hermit plot, the big one that was by the Kestrel box in Redneck where we first started. And we had a camera in the corn, and then we have a mock scrape like that cedar post that was out there on the other one. And we put a camera on the edge of the corn. Then we watched that cedar post, and Jen went through meticulously and for 2 months looked at every photo that we had. We had the rub was hit 22 times by 22 different bucks, 22 different situations. They were all unique. It wasn't like it came left for 20 seconds, came back. And then we counted the mock scrape that was 20 feet away off a branch. That was hit 210 times during the same 2 months. And it was hit 1/3 by does, 1/3 by fawns, 1/3 by bucks. Where the mock scrape was, or the rub was only hit by bucks, lots of different bucks, but 22 times. So it was pretty amazing, but it was amazing the difference between the two. But at the same time, it was pretty cool that fawns used it just as much as mature bucks or bucks in general. So that's why I like this hanging down, so it's still within reach, as opposed to a mature buck would gladly scrape under this right here. But typically that becomes more of a hunting season time too, or a late October, November, where this is year round. They hit this.
Cool. And I think too, that goes back to the stand location, camera, mock scrape. Here you're getting farther away from that bow shot. You know, where like when Jeff picked out that tree, it's like, all right, well, where are we going to hang a mock scrape and a camera to get a good bow shot too? And
camera location. Yeah. That's part of it too.
You've been talking about food plots and everything else. How many apple trees do you plant? Many? Do you do much with apple trees?
We have quite a few around here. There's one over here in this corner. And so if we were to plant apple trees, which we are not out here just because we have enough apple trees around our food plots that are natural, then I would plant them at the food plots. Well, especially when you get up more north and you have bear concerns. Red osier dogwood pockets are a really cool thing where you can fence those in. They're a lot more browse tolerant. You just keep them fenced for 3 years. Doesn't matter if they eat them down to the dirt. So up north more, I'd recommend more something like that. That's a high browse, high attraction shrub where you just have to cage it for a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, and then apple trees. But apple trees would be cool if we didn't have them to add them, but it's not going to make or break the property. It's going to be a sweetener to the plot, almost like this scrape here, but better than the scrape. But when we go to the next one we're going to stop at, we specifically call it the apple plot. And there's apples on the backside kind of scattered around, and it's kind of cool because they scrape under them. And we added a mock scrape to that, but at the same time, they're nice to have where they're at. But I always encourage you to add them with food. So we're not putting random apple trees back in the brush that they can hit, stay till dark, and you don't get to see them.
So the vertical licking, awesome. So thanks for the idea.
Yeah, sure.
Is it better to use like a native tree that's native in your woods for licking branch, or can I take some of these vines home with me and hang them up?
I like the vines, and I've seen people use them up north where there's no vines to good success. But at the same time, like white oak is really good. Jack pine is great. I like those two up north. And then hemlock, aspen. The hemlock seems pretty decent. The aspen doesn't last as long. Beech trees. So anything a buck would rub or scrape both regularly under is a great option in your area, especially like say beech. I've been in areas up north where the beech are the rubbing posts and licking branches. And so in that case you use beech.
Yeah, I know the aspen hasn't last very long, but the jack pine, they seem to like that more.
Jack pine's awesome.
Right.
They're really resilient. They bend almost like a vine. So I think jack pines last for a long time. Same with white oak. White oak's just a strong tree.
Okay.
Now we own Pure Wildlife Blends Seed Company, and we really want you to try us out. We have about 19 different offerings online. These all go back to my roots of 25 years ago and up to 30 years ago when I first started food plotting. But making these combinations, I sit at the table with our seed supplier, put all these blends together. We use pure seed with no filler, no garbage. And it's early May right now, and it's a great time to start looking at your seed. We do not run out of seed. Doesn't matter if it's switchgrass, clover, perennial blends, our fall blends, whatever it is, we don't run out. We don't want you to come at one point and then we're not here, come back in another, keep looking. We always have it on supply. Wes, our food plot seed manager, is right back there. He's shipping out daily, and really want you to check us out. Of course, we have the web classes. We go to clients every year, almost 300 a year across the country. Books. There's lots of stuff you can check out on our site, lots of free material. But I really urge you to check out purewildlifeblends.com.